Sarthak has been around. Aaron's been here before.
I'm new, Stefan.
Hey, Stefan, welcome. Zeb,
Thanks.
is Zeb here? Is he new, or has he been around? Mark looks familiar. Carrie Meadows has been around here. Paula, I think I've seen her name pop up in before.
I think. Yeah.
All right.
It's participating in the design challenge as well.
Yes. All right. So I just want to welcome everybody today to another weekly meeting. We have our meetings are weekly. Like if you haven't been in this group before, we meet weekly on Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. Pacific time, 10:30 Eastern time. So you can go to Meeting Place to see the next meeting post and also RSVP there and save the date in your calendar. For new members, we have a Discord server. We share resources, connect with other members, open a discussion. We post job opportunities in there from different cities around Canada and the US. And also, let me post the Discord invite inside of the chat here. So feel free to join the Discord channel and engage with people there. On July 1st, we started our first design challenge. And let's see. Anyway, so a number of teams are active. Some are having challenges, but we're working through that, and some team members have moved on to new teams. But we, in August 5th, August 2nd, and August 19th, we're going to have groups present, which I'll go into a little bit later. But for the new attendees, let's have you just introduce yourself, Stefan, and anybody else that's new. Just briefly tell us like where you're from and like what your focus is in your career.
Yeah, we can start
Yeah,
with,
sorry. So what was your name?
Adam Gomez, yeah.
I missed some of that. You would like me to introduce myself?
Yeah, like just let us know like where you're from and what your design focus is, and
Sure.
yeah.
So first of all, I just want to apologize. I don't have my camera's not hooked up to this computer, but I'll have it for next time. So I'm from Vancouver, British Columbia. I actually own a small video game studio here called 81 Monkeys.
Cool.
We're about we're about 4 weeks away from launching our second product, which is called the Chore app, which it's a video game. Like I said, we're a video game studio, so we're not in the app making business, but we made a video game for having kids to do chores. And
cool.
Yeah, so it's basically a video game for kids and an automated chore app for parents, and we're super excited about it to bring it to market. But it's been a really interesting design challenge for us. So my history is primarily as a video game designer with a focus on UX for video games. I've worked at a number of game studios and a number of projects over the last 12 years or so. Yeah, so
that's awesome. Yeah, welcome. Maybe you'd want to present some of your projects, with the video game app sometime you know,
Yeah, I
maybe
think,
next
yeah,
month late.
absolutely. I would love to do that actually. You know, one of the things that's you know, excites me about being part of this group or this community is being able to share the work and the challenges that I'm dealing with and that my studio is dealing with and get feedback. And, you know, we have some really interesting design challenges because we're both making a utility application and a video game at the same time. Very challenging. And one of the things that we decided to do really early on was we wanted, you know, well, we made it for children first and foremost. They were our target audience. You know, as game designers, you focus on, you know, your users, your players. So for us, parents were really an afterthought, whereas most other chore apps, they made them for parents and then they tried to sort of gamify them for kids. So it's a very different approach for us, but the decision we made early on was that we wanted to still feel like a bit of a game for parents as well. And therein lies the challenge in that, you know, we know parents are going to want to, you know, be able to have a familiar, usable, accessible app experience that follows those conventions. Yet we're trying to make it feel like it's part of this game. So I'm not sure we're there yet. We've had about 100 families in our closed beta test. But you know, these next month or so are going to be really critical. So it'd be great to share that with this group for sure.
Awesome, thank you. I'm just doing a time check. Is there anybody else that's new?
Meeting.
To just,
I think it's the same. It's the first time here.
who is?
Nitin Patil.
Yeah, hi all.
Hi, Nitin.
Yeah, good evening.
Why don't you just take like a minute and just tell us, you know, about your where you're from and what you're working on, and then
Yeah, sure. I'm from Pune, India, and I'm a UI developer, and I know actually UX, but I didn't work on that. But I want to learn the UX as well. So I learn. So I joined this community with you, Adam, because
yeah,
first I interact with you on LinkedIn, and
yeah,
looking forward to learn new things actually.
awesome. Yeah, thanks for reaching out and for joining. We should probably who else?
Hey, I'm Anvika. I'm new to this too. I'm currently based in Vancouver. I shifted to Vancouver from India last year. I'm new to UX UI as well, so I'm here to learn. I learned about IterateUX on LinkedIn, so I was just curious, and I just joined a call.
Awesome.
I'm delighted to be here.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So we should probably move in, like we can chat, you know, inside of Discord, and, you know, and meet new people there. So we should probably get going. We have an awesome speaker today. It's Kelsey Kinney. She's going to be speaking at British Museum mobile app design that she's worked on. And before we hand it over to her, I'm going to post in the chat who's going to be presenting in the coming months in August for the groups. So group 8 and 1 is on the 15th, group 6 and 4 is on the 12th, group 7 is going to be on the 19th. So if you want to get share Kelsey with being able to be the host and so she can share her screen and get started. Okay.
Don't forget to come and stay until the finish, because we have more announcements for you all, like job posts, or like Adam has like connections that could be helpful for you all as well. And announce about the new members. in the end. Our great team is growing. Kelsey, are you available? Are you able to share your screen?
Yeah, I can get started whenever you guys are ready.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let me just share my screen.
You want to introduce yourself, Kelsey?
Oh, sure. I can get started. I'll share the screen and then I'll kind of like go from there. Can you guys see me at all or no?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So let me just bring up the presentation because you guys are blocking that a little bit for me. Okay, cool. Hi guys, I'm Kelsey. I'm based in Portland, Oregon. I'm a junior UX designer. So my previous experience was I was a sales operations analytics manager at a finance firm, and I left that to actually study UX design in a bootcamp course called Design Lab. So this was one of the projects that I worked on during the time there. And so basically what I'm hoping I can do in this presentation is I had designed an app for the British Museum. So I know we have a wide variety of designers here, some who are much more senior and experienced and people who are kind of interested in it. So hoping that maybe the process I went through might be helpful. I'm also going to focus on some software that I used during prototyping and usability testing. So maybe from some senior people, maybe I can introduce you to some software maybe that's newer. And then hopefully we can have some sort of discussion at the end of the day kind of about some of the techniques and things like that. So to kind of jump into it, so the original brief I was given when I started this project was design a mobile app, an end-to-end mobile application, which is pretty vague. And so a bit about me, I'm kind of a nerd. I really love history. I really like museums. And also I grew up in the UK. I spent ages 6 to 18 living in England. And so because of that, museums are free there. So I'll spend a lot of my formative years in museums. And so I really wanted to see if I could challenge myself to kind of bring museums to the 21st century. So when I started this project, I did some research to figure out what was going on with the museum kind of landscape, what challenges are they facing today. And a big challenge was that they needed to step up their technology to help kind of keep a younger audience engaged moving forward. Right now, I don't know if you guys have ever checked out any of the museum apps that are out there, but they're pretty bad. Either they're pretty much shells of an app, if you know what I'm talking about, right? Where it's like someone made an app because they felt like they had to, but they really didn't put any thought into what it was. Or a lot of them were just stuck behind paywalls. So for instance, the British Museum and the Louvre and all these kind of big ticket museums that you've heard of, they actually all kind of work with the same company that puts it behind a paywall. And even then, when you look at what they were doing, it wasn't very interesting. So when I was trying to do some competitive research, I realized that I needed to go into indirect competitors to find some inspiration. And weirdly enough, the two biggest sources of inspiration for this project for me were actually Disneyland, their app, and actually Pokemon Go, of all things. Which I know sounds kind of strange for those of you familiar with it. If you're not, it's a mobile game that essentially, while you're walking, you can interact with Pokemon essentially and catch them as you go. So where the Disneyland app more acted as elevating kind of an experience by providing convenience, giving information, basically lets you get fast passes, it shows you wait times, things like that, just tools that help you with that experience. So by taking a look at those indirect competitors, I realized my challenge that I wanted to put to myself when I was making this was, how do you increase user engagement at a museum? How do you elevate that experience without actually distracting from the museum itself, right? The last thing that anyone wants, especially the museum, would be people just walking around on their phones, not paying attention to things, potentially even bumping into people, right? So that would not be great. So that was kind of what I started with. So then to kind of go through that next stage of the process, I was kind of assuming people even wanted to go to museums or do things. So I started doing some user research. So I talked to people, I did some surveys and one-on-one interviews, and the results of my research were essentially this. And my process for when I synthesize research is I tend to like to summarize it into goals, needs, pains, and gains. And I won't lie, this is kind of stolen from a SWOT analysis, but I just changed the acronym a little bit. When I used to do the team management, when we were trying to plan for what we're going to do for the year, we would do a lot of SWOT analysis. And it was really helpful in identifying those areas. So I decided, well, I can kind of jimmy that a little bit and make it work for my research synthesis. So for goals, that's how I like to frame the app. So why are people even attending a museum? Why are they using your product? Why are they using your service? So that helps me know, okay, how am I going to approach this problem? The needs, what's the absolute content that's needed and the information that's there that the users need to actually accomplish their goals. So that means I know what for sure I have to include in what I'm doing for my designs. The pains, what are some of the hiccups along the way? What have people have experienced in the past that have encumbered them on their way to their goals? What's made that difficult for them? So that way I can potentially find a competitive advantage there to actually help alleviate some of those pains with that product. And finally, the gains. Gains can be both a combination of what people actually tell you in the research of like, hey, this would be really cool if an app did this, but also I view it as like a further synthesis of the 3 other items into how can I make a competitive advantage for this? What are the real gains I can give somebody by using this app, and what would make it compelling for them to download it? To kind of summarize some of the information that's on the screen, because I know everyone can read, is essentially that people went to museums because they wanted to learn something and they wanted to kind of see bucket list items, so a lot of tourism, right? Needs, kind of the information that's there, map information, exhibit information, piece information, pretty basic. Pains, people hated museum apps, maps, which I'm sure is shocking to absolutely nobody who's been to a museum before. And additionally, it was more like they get overwhelmed. Large crowds were a big problem because they felt rushed. And additionally, that maybe they might miss information because there's just too much going on. So some of the gains that I thought could really happen from this is that maps are customized to where users are, kind of like a Google Maps situation. Push notifications can be used. So maybe custom routes and plans and itineraries might be there. Some sort of system to sort of maximize crowd control. And finally, some sort of interactive elements that really can bring user engagement and experience to a new level. So with that research, I kind of viewed some next steps that I needed to pursue. So these are some features that I really wanted to focus on. And while I should say that this project was done in a 2-week span, so some of these points that I wanted to work on were developed a little bit more extensively than others in my designs. But the first one, like I said, a map localized for the person who's in the museum, additionally the ability to get custom directions. Additionally, the ability to maximize the time that you spend there. So some sort of ability to recommend a list of activities to do. A big inspiration for this, I don't know if anyone's ever used the product Ride Max, but it's again tangentially related to Disney, but essentially you put in the rides you want to do, the activities you want to do that day, and the time that you have. And it literally gives you an itinerary of how you're supposed to do that to maximize your time and avoid lines. So I thought that was a great inspiration. A virtual queue system, so people can kind of wait in a line and go see something else in the museum. And finally, to incorporate guided audio tours with interactivity in the form of AR to really make an immersive experience. So I then jumped into the information architecture. Now, some of you are going to say, hey, Kelsey, where are the personas? Where are the affinity maps? Like, what's going on with that? And I kind of wanted to have a discussion about this at the end, because I did those things, but when I was working by myself in kind of that short time span, I actually didn't find the personas I made of the affinity maps very helpful. I remembered the research and the way they synthesized it for me made it easier to kind of jump to the next step, and I kind of left the personas behind. But I can imagine that would be helpful when you're working with stakeholders or other designers in your team to help defend design decisions that you're making for people who may not have been in that research. So I would love to talk about that more to see what people's thoughts on it, but I didn't include it because I didn't find it instrumental in what I was doing. But when I kind of moved into the information architecture, I used, to actually get started, I got stumped. And I thought to myself, okay, I don't know how people would find things in the museum or go use the app to find different tasks. So I decided to implement card sorting technique. And so I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with card sorting, but that's essentially just asking participants to take different cards. So in my instance, I was doing tasks and sort them into categories. And I used Optimal Workshop to do that, which is really awesome for anybody who's kind of aspiring. You can do a free test, which lets you use up to 30 cards and doesn't minimize any of the categories that you're using. So I found that really helpful when I was trying to get started, so not having to pay for things as I went. And so essentially what I did is I had the users do 28 tasks. So things from where are the bathrooms to finding out information about an exhibit. And I had them sort them into 9 different categories with the ability to actually add their own categories if something didn't actually end up working out for them. And overwhelmingly what I found through all of this was that when people couldn't figure out how they wanted to find a task with the categories I gave them, they used the search functionality, which I feel like is probably shocking to nobody who's more senior in that respect. But for me, that screamed that I needed to put the search in the navigation bar, and I also needed to make sure that I incorporated that search functionality with the map to really make it an effective tool. But So I use that to essentially kind of start putting together the basis of a sitemap. I will say this, the sitemap that you're seeing right here is basically the last version. Which took many iterations, and that's because usability testing basically proved me time and time again that I did not think like everybody else thought, and I had to basically change the way things were organized and how things flowed through. So that's probably my biggest takeaway that I've learned through all these projects, is that usability testing is so very important, because you put a big old red button in the middle of the screen and you think, great, they're gonna see that. But if that's not where they're expecting that to be, then you're gonna miss them entirely. So just having that constant check on your assumptions is super important, that I found. And basically, if I incorporate it as early as I can to the process, that's very helpful for me. So after I had this put together, I was able to put together the kind of basics for some low fidelity wireframes. I won't go into this too much for the sake of time, but essentially just going to show you part of that process. But I wanted to go into the fact that I ended up doing 2 rounds of usability testing, both for low fidelity wireframes as well as for high fidelity wireframes. And so I wanted to do it for both places, so that the visual, like language, the images, the copy, the kind of colors didn't distract from the overall navigation and flow. So I could really make sure I had a strong foundation. And so something that kind of going away from the actual British Museum itself, but something I wanted to talk about today, is that I used Figma for this entire project. And so I know that the industry standard tends to be Sketch. I own a PC though, and I wasn't quite committed to purchasing a Mac right this moment. So I worked with Figma. And because of that, because I know it's not the industry standard, I wanted to go over some of its prototyping capabilities, because I think it's a pretty powerful tool. And it's all free. And on top of that, since anybody can use it, both Macs and PCs, I think it's also helpful potentially for client relationships who maybe don't have Macs. So just quickly to go over some of its capabilities, if you basically open up the prototyping tool, what happens is you essentially have the design tab to the left, you click on the prototype there on the right, and then if you haven't clicked on an actual element in your design, if it's just the settings, it knows by the frame that you chose what type of prototype you're dealing with. So if it's phone, tablet, desktop, then it'll basically customize. You can choose the color of the device, and you can choose the color of the background, which is kind of cool. And it lets you pick the starting frame, so your home screen for anybody using the prototype. Then you jump into the element, so you can determine the different interaction types that are available here. So it does let you pick between different, like if it knows the difference between touch commands versus PC commands. And additionally, I think that's cool, if you actually download the Figma app, you can put it right on your phone or your designs, and you can test the prototype on your phone as you go, which is pretty cool, because then you can also make design decisions very quickly on that, which I found really helpful when trying to figure out how big my thumb was over an item, basically. So you can see on the top right, you can change the different types of interaction types. On the bottom left, from once you've picked like on tap, you can tell the prototype what you want it to do. So you have the ability to do navigate to, which will take you to another frame. Open overlay, which is like a pop-up, so like a confirmation window essentially. Swap with is essentially like, I've used that for like doing inactive or active button states. Back just automatically takes the user back to the last screen that they're on the prototype with. Closing the overlay is pretty much easily just closing that. And then opening a link takes you to an external hyperlink. And then finally, it also has some animation capabilities. It's not as extensive as Framer, for definitely not that cool, but it definitely has some kind of nice touches there. And Smart Animate actually uses some context clues of what you've given it from interactions to actually determine what the best transition is for you. Other cool things that prototyping I've done in Figma is I've done parallax scrolling in it, where it lets you do like kind of like a map, where the prototype I used here actually let you kind of scroll kind of like a map, whether you have fixed navigation and headers. I've also been able to do picture carousels, which is pretty cool, and timed overlays. So there's a lot of potential here. So in case you're interested, you should definitely just play around with it. There's also a presentation mode, which lets you share a prototype with other people while you're actually interacting with it to really showcase it. So cool software. So I did 2 rounds of usability testing. I basically did unmoderated and moderated usability testing. The purpose of that was, the moderated gives me the ability to really delve into why people are doing what they're doing with the app and the prototype, and ask the questions of why things were confusing, what their expectations were. Whereas the unmoderated was really helpful because it helped me prioritize. So if somebody tells me, oh, this is really confusing, this isn't helpful to me, if everybody's saying that, when I see that in the unmoderated results as well, it really helps me pick what feedback is more helpful, especially if I'm receiving conflicting feedback, which I did receive during the low fidelity usability testing. So the software I used for the usability testing, in case anyone hasn't dealt with this before, is Maze. Maze is pretty cool. Again, it's a free software you can use. I'm all about that free software, apparently. But essentially, you can load in your prototypes directly into it. So I use Figma. I saw Envision does that. It had an icon for Sketch. I'm not quite sure what that does because I don't believe that Sketch has prototyping capabilities, but let me know if I'm wrong there. And what you can do is on the free version, you can add up to 10 kind of tasks or questions you want people to answer. And you can then set up success pathways. So essentially you can say, if I want them to find directions to the Rosetta Stone, I can then basically tell them, okay, these are all the ways you're gonna navigate the prototype for me to view that as success. And then what happens from there is once you put it live, it'll basically give your total app a usability score, which is broken up by several different metrics, things like misclick rate, how much time they spent in the app, the success rate, so how often do they fall, one of the success rates for you, and bounce rate, which was how often do they give up in the task midway through. And it's really cool because then you can break down each task and get a usability score from there. And then you can even go into each individual user and see kind of exactly where they went through that whole process, including kind of a heat map, which you can see down there at the bottom, which shows you where people clicked, things like that. So it really gives you some in-depth knowledge about how to kind of start fixing some of the usability tests moving forward. So that's kind of a bit about Maze and a bit kind of about the usability testing that I did. So this is some examples of some of the results of the usability testing. So some things that are in there are really dumb. This is just a small chunk of it. I had a ton. And like things like ability to cancel a queue, kind of embarrassing. Obviously you'd want to be able to hop out of something if you joined a queue and didn't want to be in it anymore. But other things that were really kind of cool were suggestions that people had made. Things like if you're making an itinerary for somebody, being able to have like a whole map showcasing where that plan is going for the day. So really cool things from usability testing. I'm very pro that. So kind of going past it, once I had gone through usability testing and I kind of made the strong foundation for the usability of the app itself for more just a lo-fi, I needed to start talking about the visual identity and the UI components of the app itself. So the British Museum is obviously an established brand. It has its own style guide that you can find online. It has a very distinctive style. Here I kind of faked up some marketing that I'd used for the app. So if anybody's familiar with the British Museum, they have these very long banners that they hang outside of it, which is me kind of trying to mimic those here. And essentially what the visual language looks like is that strong black backgrounds with their images cut out with a lot of white and kind of some pops of color. And these colors that are used here are actually colors that I picked as opposed to necessarily what typically the British Museum uses. The British Museum tends to use more like saturated colors than this. They're very strong, vivid colors. I purposely actually went a little bit warmer and less saturated, and the reason for that is I wanted it to have a more warm and friendly appeal. And additionally, the visual identity of the app ended up being a lot more white space as opposed to black, just trying to make it seem clean and easy to use and friendly, especially considering some of the technology I'd be using, such as AR, might be a little bit confusing for people. So I wanted to have that approachability vibe. I won't go too much into the UI kit, but just so you guys can see it, I put together this once I had kind of established the visual identity. So there's my color palette, some of the iconography that I used, as well as some of the navigation items and some general views of imagery that I used in the app as well. As you can see here, this is where I more used the kind of images cut out against the black background. So kind of the final parts of this presentation are me kind of really going over the final products and how I kind of went after those key features I talked about at the beginning. So for custom directions, I wanted to have multiple entry points to be able to have people be able to get custom directions to wherever they wanted to go in the museum. So in the first home screen, in that first part with the bust of Ramsay II, I had a rotating carousel there of like bucket list items that the museum could designate. And if you clicked on that, that could take you to the piece page to find out more information. If you go to the search page, you could type in Rosetta Stone here, for instance, and that yellow button by the picture of the Rosetta Stone would actually be a directions button. And then if you're actually on the piece page itself, you would press the triple dot button, you'd actually have that menu pop up at the bottom with the directions there at the top. And then on the actual map page itself, this is what the directions would look like. The idea here would be that the red button would be kind of pulsing and you'd walk, it would follow along until you got where you needed to go. And then the map itself, obviously since people wanted to see bucket list items, I wanted to make sure that in the map itself highlighted those with those circles of really key pieces you need to see in the museum. So that's kind of the first flow. The second flow is virtual queues. So this was the ability to actually add yourself to a queue as you went throughout the day. I made sure, if you can see in the first thing there, they are timed. The idea was there that the whole point would be dissolved if everyone could just save up their queues all day long and then just go redeem them, because then everybody would still be waiting in lines. So there is a timed functionality here. This, you can see your active queues. If you wanted to add a new one, you can see the flow here. Basically, you go to the join a queue page, you could join whatever popular queue that you wanted to do. You could add the number of guests, and you get a little quick description of what the service would be like and a quick reminder about the timing. Once you get your queue called, a push notification would come through. You go back to the queue page, you can hit redeem, and you show the QR code to the attendant. So that is another kind of pathway I took. This is kind of where the fun part comes in for me, of like where I got to kind of build in some more of the interactivity. So the idea for the AR mode was built from two different concepts. The first one, which is where the three first pictures there are addressing, is how many times have you guys been at a place and they've told you, okay, this painting is really cool because there's a painting beneath the painting. And then all you can think of is, well, I want to see the painting beneath the painting now. So that's where I wanted to basically address that concept a little bit. So in this instance, you would be on maybe an audio tour or an Egyptology. You would be faced with this sarcophagus that's in front of you that they tell you some fun fact. They prompt you to press the Q button there. You can see at the bottom of the screen. You'd hold up your phone to the sarcophagus, and then once the phone had registered it, you'd actually be able to see the mummy underneath it. So this would be kind of a fun way to get a more intimate experience with some of the pieces in the exhibit that you wouldn't necessarily have gotten without that app. Additionally, from a more kind of convenient standpoint, let's say you're hanging out, you're wanting to see, in this instance, the guardian winged lions, and you basically, there's a whole crowd of people around it, you can't see that information. Well, if you press that button, you can hold your phone up, let your phone register, and you can take you to the piece information itself and still be able to see what you wanted to see without necessarily having the crowd blocking it. So these are some of the AR modes I came up with. Additionally, I wanted to have something for the less planners of the people, the more spontaneous, people who are spontaneous. So I have an AR navigation mode, essentially. And the idea would be, if you're in the map, you could press the AR mode button and you would hold up your phone and kind of be able to look around and kind of wander the museum and make your own kind of self-guided tour. You could press the information button, which would then pop up information. Here you have King, and Kotep, and you could see more to actually go to the piece page itself. And additionally, if you're more visual with your directions and you don't like the map, you could use AR mode to actually showcase as you're wandering the map. You could see the arrows on the floor kind of pointing you where you need to go. So there's kind of like the more in-depth flows that I designed for. In the future, some other items I'd want to expand upon, that itinerary is one of those items that I didn't necessarily get a ton of time with. Basically, this current one, what I have here is basically you could do, this would be I designed for if you had already made an itinerary. So you could see the items that you have here, the plan, and the active queues you're in, suggested activities with a collapsed view as well. Because that was actually some usability feedback that I got that people didn't like or wanted different levels of information. But also, I'd want to expand this further to actually be able to actually create your itinerary and specifically be able to create a custom one, kind of like that ride maps I talked about earlier, or have a museum curated one. So you have 2 hours in the museum, what do you want to do? Or if you do want to do like specifically Egyptology, things like that. Other ideas I have are doing kind of a gamification. So you try to find all those Easter egg items in your achievements to be kind of 100% a museum. I also like the idea of potentially globalizing that so that you can see if you've seen, how many artifacts around the world have you seen, would be kind of a cool expansion upon this. Photos would be kind of a silly thing, kind of inspired by Google Arts and Culture app, which if you haven't checked out is really cool. But the idea would be like you take a selfie and you find something in the museum that looks like you or something like that, kind of like fun little engagement items. The last thing I want to talk about is kind of where I saw the app going in the future. Obviously museum involvement would really be needed. So I would definitely want to think about how to really incorporate that. A big thing that I knew that I needed to do was to create some sort of tutorial section for some of those more advanced features. like the AR, just because they're not necessarily intuitive, and a cube icon is not necessarily something that people recognize. So again, trying to train people in that and hoping the museum to kind of come on board with some marketing materials, maybe in a little section that helps you train it, things like that. I talked about gamifying the experience, kind of potentially expanding that globally. And then obviously family friendly. I didn't talk to anybody, unfortunately, in my research pool that had kids, but I know that they're a huge component of museums. I was one of those kids. The British Museum has an amazing backpack program. They send kids on scavenger hunts. So finding a way to really incorporate that into the app would definitely be something I'd want to do in the future. So that's pretty much my presentation. I wanted to know if people had any questions or kind of discussion points. It looks like there's a bunch going on here in the chat.
Congratulations, it was amazing. I like so much.
I appreciate it.
Great job.
Yeah, great job. Great project.
Yeah, I love so much the AR section. Awesome.
Thanks.
Great job. I imagine that for the Louvre in Paris.
Yeah.
Really useful for Louvre.
Yeah, definitely. And I was thinking like Mona Lisa, where like
you have to sell them. So
there's a lot of data points too that you could have in the AR that you wouldn't be able to access, easily, but it would be really context specific on an item where you can expand, and provide more and more information if somebody was interested. Do you want to go into your questions that are in there, and then we can have people ask others vocally?
Yeah. I'm just kind of trying to look through. It looks like some people answered some of the questions. Like, yeah, can you make a carousel animation? Yeah, you can. You can definitely do that. Okay. Oh, that's sketch and some basic prototyping. Good to know, Sarah. Okay, Adobe XD, non-fan sketch, la la la. Adobe Sketch, good plugin.
I think maybe we don't have as many questions, specifically that I'm seeing, but maybe I'll kick it off and then we can have some other people join in and ask verbally. What about a possible geocaching game in the museum where you have to go on a scavenger hunt and then each day there might be like a winner and whoever finds the geocache, solving, learning things and solving a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think that'd be really cool. Actually, it's funny that you say that because when I was brainstorming with my roommates, that was one of the first things they brought up was like, oh, you could have like a scavenger hunt through the museum. So like, I would love that, especially if you could like make it somehow so it's like tied to the app, or maybe you just take like pictures or something and kind of upload things as you go as checkpoints. I think that would be really cool. There was a question here, Sarah. You asked if it was for iOS, Android, or web. For me, I designed this for iOS specifically.
Does anybody want to just speak up and ask a question, or do you want to just have them enter it via the chat?
we have some.
I would love to speak up.
So you have questions here. What about Geo? My questions actually. How many people do you have interviewing on research? How many people?
How many people did I have? I had probably in my survey, I had probably about 25 people.
Why
25. And then from an interview standpoint, I think I did 10 in-person one-on-one, or not in-person, sorry, remote or in-person interviews. Obviously COVID challenges that a little bit more, but yeah, I think that was for my basic research. And then for like card sorting, I think it was like 30 people ended up doing that. And usability testing, I had a pretty good network through Design Lab. A lot of people helped each other out. So I think with usability testing, that ended up being in total between the two rounds, probably again about 30, 40 people who did that.
So much, so many.
Yeah.
So
Does anybody want to raise their hand in their video or speak up?
Sorry, I've got a quick question. So I don't want to put you on the spot, Kelsey, or anything, but I'm curious, like, since you're working on this during COVID,
Yeah.
did you think at all about like how the app would look different, or like if you would add a feature considering like social distancing guidelines?
Sure. I will say that when I was originally coming up with this, I did not think necessarily about how, I guess I didn't know how much the new normal would really be the new normal, if that makes sense.
I don't think any of us did.
So I didn't necessarily design for that specifically, but if I were to think about that, I feel like the difference would be probably how the admission into the museum would work itself, I would imagine. Like a lot of like the gyms that I go to recently, it's a lot of times you have to make reservations as opposed to just showing up. So it'd probably be something like that. There'd probably be like limitations to who could go into what room at what time. And you could probably find information on that maybe in the piece page itself or exhibits. It would just be kind of like a running list of like the room capacity at any point. And maybe kind of like a virtual queue system. You could also have like a virtual room system to kind of like book a room while you're in the museum. That's probably how I'd approach something like that.
We have more questions here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You might already mention, but how long did your entire process take you to wrap up this project?
The whole process from iteration to final prototype with all the usability testing put in there took 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Usability testing. Okay. So short time. And
it was lower.
what do you like to change in the design or in the project if you have the chance to make it?
What would I like to change? Kind of some of the points, I'd like to expand upon certain elements a little bit more that I touched upon. I wouldn't mind re-investigating maybe some of the color scheme with the navigation bar. Maybe make it look a little more sleek. Trying to think if there's anything else. Yeah, I think those would be the biggest changes I would make, unless anybody has any wonderful feedback. I'm very open to it.
Was this project you have imagined from the beginning?
Sorry, was it that I managed it from the beginning? Is that what you said?
Yeah, was this project you have imagined as a project when you finished? Yeah.
Was this a project I kind of imagined when I started off with? I would say it was kind of close to it. Yeah, I mean, when I went into it, I didn't necessarily have a really firm idea of what I wanted to do. I just knew that I wanted it to be interactive and immersive, and I wanted to like make it useful. And a lot of the kind of were developed a lot of times came from the research of what people were suggesting, what people wanted. The only thing I really knew was that interactivity element that I really wanted to include somehow. So this is pretty much what I thought about when kind of at the end of the day.
Okay, good. How would you expand this app so it can be inclusive for all users, visually impaired, hearing impaired, etc.?
How would I make this so it's inclusive? So for the visual impairment, obviously the AR component wouldn't be as effective there. But that's a really great question, actually. I have to think about that. Yeah, it's kind of difficult in that one. I would say that, not for visual impairment, for anybody though that has some hearing capabilities, the app does have all the transcripts for anything that's audio kind of as an option that you can flip between. For visual impairment, I think I would have to have some sort of, with the AR, a description. So instead of necessarily having them hold up their phone, if they enabled that, I'm visually impaired, and maybe in the settings, that essentially it could actually describe what might be seen for them, as opposed to that. But that's definitely a great question. It's something I definitely would need to think about a lot more carefully, for sure, and do a lot more research on, to be perfectly frank.
Actually, with that question, I had just one website from the UX, really well known, that right now I don't remember his name, but he has the only website for inclusive website. just the only one that I okay. So just
Yeah.
next question. What was the most useful user test for you? User test.
The most useful user test for me was actually the low fidelity moderated usability testing. So that was when I was still trying to figure out the kind of the bare bones. And because the people, I found it really helpful because sometimes people when they're, which I definitely found with high fidelity, people want to give you feedback about the style of the app, or they want to tell you about the visuals or their opinions on that, which is all great and actually very helpful. But when you're just trying to figure out, hey, is this actually usable? Am I actually like making content that makes sense to people? For me, that was really helpful because that's when people weren't distracted by those options and actually were giving me really concise feedback of like, this doesn't make sense to me because of this, or this is really helpful because of this. So that was like where I had the most amount of feedback and changed the app the most dramatically.
Okay. How did you test the AR part?
I tested the AR part. I will say that I didn't get like full testing because obviously with prototypes they're fairly static. But what I did do is in Figma I do have this ability to do kind of timed overlays or time delays. So how I did that in prototyping, where I basically would have people click on the phone, and I would kind of, if I was moderated, I'd give them a hint, and I'd tell them like, hey, by the way, this is supposed to mimic AR. And then it would actually then flip automatically to the next screen, trying to mimic that process of what it looked like for a phone to be kind of zoning in on something that you're focusing on. So that was basically how I tested for that.
Great. What about, wait a minute, we jump. Yeah. What about color combination? What was in your mind to select these, I think?
Who asked that question?
What about color combination?
I get those from Nitin. I'm so sorry, Nitin. If you wouldn't mind providing a little bit more clarity, is it what you're asking there?
Yeah, actually, what was your what was in your mind about the color combination? Why you choose this color combination actually?
Got it. Okay, why I kind of chose the white, black, and like the red, blue, and green.
Yeah, yeah.
So the white and black was definitely determined by the British Museum's already established brand guidelines. I wanted to stay within their visual identity just to make sure that the app looked congruent with things that people might already be familiar with. But the red, green, and blue, they use a lot of primary colors in their own marketing. And so I knew that they like to use red specifically. And so from there, I used red as a highlight color. And then I tried to find a complementary color to that. So yellow tends to work pretty well with red, in my personal opinion. And so I liked kind of also the brightness of the yellow, and kind of like how like it tends to instill, again, like kind of happiness and like brightness. And so I thought that would add a layer of fun and approachability to the app as well. The green was honestly because like it was the only other color that really worked well with the other colors that were there.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Do you think that this museum invests in VR app in the future?
So specifically, just want to make sure, do you mean virtual reality or like the AR kind of things I was talking about?
Virtual reality, you know,
post
COVID, where you can't go to the museum, but they can create a VR experience of the museum so people can have a subscription or a paid app to access the museum in VR.
So I do think it's potential. So the reason I say that is they do already do kind of a cool thing where they've clearly had somebody go through with like kind of Google's technology and photograph like major exhibits they have. And you can go on their website and kind of look at it through Google and like kind of walk through the museum. Obviously, that's far from virtual reality because that requires like obviously the headset and much more expansion on that. But at the same time, again, if anyone's interested in the Google Arts and Culture app, they have actually a lot of like virtual reality kind of exhibits you can do. And they're more static. They're not necessarily like, oh, I'm going to move through the museum. They're kind of like static imagery, but you can look around as though you're looking at 360 at like an exhibit. And I think the British Museum might have partnered with them on that on several occasions. So I think there's some possibility, and that would be a really cool way to potentially avoid or work within the new normal for sure.
Great. Then, how many people? So sorry. Yeah. How many people were involved with you in this project?
It was me, myself, and I.
Yeah, you and you. How was your experience with you?
Yeah, you know, I fought a lot with myself and definitely had some, you know, no, it was good. I had a part of Design Lab, you have a mentor, similar to a lot of kind of like online boot camps. And so she was really helpful. She kind of acted almost like as a product manager for me in this role, where she would kind of make sure I hit milestones and obviously add kind of feedback, or if she didn't think things worked well or things like that. So that's probably the only person I worked with in this project, and that was really helpful, and I loved it.
Yeah, the next question is my question actually. How was your experience with the stakeholders? Or in that time that could be useful because you don't have stakeholders. Maybe how was your experience with the client?
I didn't really have a client, if that makes sense, just because it was kind of like a school project. So unfortunately, I would love to work with the British Museum, but unfortunately I didn't actually have anybody in this instance.
Okay, so it was free, you know, like
exactly, yeah.
Pressure.
Yeah.
Why did you decide not to create personas?
Oh, I did create personas. I did actually go through that whole process and did the Affinity Maps. For me personally, when I did them, after I did them, I just didn't find them very helpful, honestly. I had 4 different ones. One was more like an older woman looking to kind of get information. One was more newer, like a millennial who was trying to like check bucket list items off his list. And one was kind of looking for like a good time with her family outing. But I guess when I was so close to the research, if that makes sense, like it was only 2 weeks. So I really started working through things very quickly. So I didn't need to synthesize it in quite that way for me to like make design decisions off of. But like I said, I would love to talk about like what people find helpful about them, or if it is more for like stakeholders and designers internally. I would love to hear more discussion on that.
A friend of mine, he prefers like archetypes versus personas.
Okay.
So you might look into that, how they're related.
I will.
Yeah, I think we finished with the questions.
Okay.
Let me see. What flow would you know? We have one. What flow would you integrate gamification, and how does that fit into the budget scope of a project and project like this?
Let's see.
Well, the last one.
Yeah. I don't necessarily have a budget scope, just because this was more of a project, and so in my head I could kind of go above and beyond of like the kind of biggest things, which was the pro of that. But a flow that I would make for integrating integration or gamification would be, there's an app that one of my roommates is obsessed with. It's called Tapify, and it basically allows you to check beers in and kind of like compete with your friends. And so the element I kind of saw with that would be, like in the UK, since so many of the museums are free, there is a large local presence that goes to the museum. It's like it's a thing that people do. It's like a Friday night activity. A lot of museums put on things like that. And so I thought that would be a way of being able to like, you would go through and you have to check in like what you've seen in the museum, what you've done, like maybe you found those like Easter eggs that are thrown out throughout the museum, the AR things. And so you could actually, less like competing with people, but more of like a knowledge of like helping you figure out where you could go in the museum next and what you hadn't seen. And like I said, I would love to expand that further if other like people got on board to actually like make it so that essentially like you could do things throughout the world and kind of see how much you've seen of the world's artifacts. So that would be kind of a thing I'd want to do in the future.
There's something that somebody did probably a couple years ago, that released icon sets, and they gamified it by allowing people to trade with other people icons in order to get the full set. And so it increased interaction with other people associated with the product. So possibly you could have tokens that people could trade with others that, you know, I don't know.
No, I actually like that concept a lot. That's really fun. Like kind of like a trading card. It's Pokemon, right? Like the inspiration I had. Well,
Yeah.
cool. If that's everyone's questions, thank you guys so much for listening to me kind of ramble on about my project. And I
Thank you so much. Oh, I'm so happy to hear your project. It was amazing. It was excited. Great.
Yeah, thanks
Good
a lot,
job.
Kelsey.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, we need to announce the new members for our group. We have last meeting we present one of them, and we have two more. That is Jose from Argentina, that is going to be the content creator. So thank you, Jose, to coming and be part of this great group as admin team. And we have again Victoria, that he was from the beginning. Yeah, maybe not from the beginning, but maybe in the, we just have about 5 months, so she could be
months, maybe 2, 3.
maybe what, a month? No, maybe more.
No, it's been like three and a half
Yeah.
months.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I was 2 or 3 months. I'm not that sure. Yeah, like yeah. So thank you, Victoria, for coming and help us. Yeah, and she is going to be the yeah, she's going to be the copywriter. So yeah, thank you. So we are really happy to be growing and growing day by day, and yeah, we need to give you all the most yeah, or service, right? Like be useful for you in all terms. And now I want to introduce the new one, Seb. You can talk, Seb. Yeah.
I think he's.
I think, are you talking, this is Sabrina, I've asked you. I think
Sabrina.
it says
Oh, okay. You have
yeah.
in your.
Hi, it must. That is a nickname. I probably was going quickly at some point. Hi, everyone. Sabrina, I've asked you. I'm in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And really, I've been in software, customer success, and business analysis. I'm curious about product and UX. So I've been here to just kind of learn about what do you guys do every day, and it's fascinating. So it's nice to join.
Awesome. Welcome.
Oh, welcome. I think meeting is already done. Soyoung So Lakby. Are you there? I asked you unmute. Yeah, okay.
Hi there. Sorry, I was eating my dinner as I was watching. But yeah, I am currently in a boot camp called Springboard, and yeah, I'm doing my third project, and yeah, it's going pretty well. Currently, I work for a company, a software company, as a customer support representative. So it's been really cool to be in that field, to be more closer with the dev team, well, not directly working with them, but hearing them from all the time, and designers, and so it's been a really good experience. So yeah, I'm glad to be here and learn more from other people.
Awesome. Thank you and welcome. Nice to having you here.
Welcome.
Burrell, Blake, are you there? I ask you to unmute yourself. Okay. Yeah, was amazing. Adam, you have any announce?
I guess for the new people, you know, IterateUX all started because, you know, Leticia and I decided, instead of just meeting one-on-one, to invite friends. And so when we met for the first time, we had 10 plus people, and we had great conversation. and it didn't end. Next week we met again, and that's how it all got started. So now we're at 185 people on in the group, and it's going to continue to grow. And like, yeah, and lots of people are adding tons of value in Discord and presenting and sharing their knowledge, and it's awesome. Like, we really appreciate the community and everyone that, you know, takes part, and so thank you.
Okay, I think I put it here, my LinkedIn. If you want to connect with me, everyone can put their own their own LinkedIn to follow up, and you can connect. You can ask whatever you want, whenever you want, through that. And in the same time, you can come or to our Discord channel, or to be participating in this group. And we have weekly meeting, and we have design challenge, and we have different programs for people that need to learn from others, in the same time trying to level up their design skills and UX skills as well, maybe just researching, or maybe just creating, you know, interaction design, and yeah, like this kind of community wants to really connect with others, yeah, because if we have tons of people, maybe it's not really well connected with others. So yeah, just let me know if you need something for me or for Adam, or yeah.
I think that's something that we really value, and we want to make sure is still a thing as we grow, that like that we care about people, we're here to help people and connect people, and so yeah, and feel free to, you know, help others in the group, and if somebody needs something, you know, bring it to our attention. And yeah, I think networking and helping each other in our careers and job search and stuff is all something like we value and want to help with. And Letitia and I and the team we're working on stuff that will help with that. So stay tuned.
Yeah, thank you for you to be here. Thank you. Going to my group. Okay. Yeah, I think we finished. If you want, come to happy hour and meet we the community, you know, and try to bring a beer, bring some snack to eat together. Yeah, the idea is to hang out a little bit and know each other a little bit more. Yeah, just have fun. Yeah, so that's cool. Everyone can bring here can upload the link for your LinkedIn, and see you in Discord channel. And this meeting is going to be uploaded in YouTube if you want to refresh today's meeting. So
before we end, does anybody have any questions about the group or IterateUX stuff?
Or whatever.
Well, thanks for everyone coming.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. See you.
All right.
Thank you.
See you.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah. I joined the Discord too. So.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Kelsey, that was awesome.
Okay. Bye for now.
Kelsey. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Kelsey.
Thanks, Kelsey. You were great.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
You too.